Good evening. I am Glendora Lashley. Welcome to For the Hour. Our topic tonight is Beneath the Surface, Racism versus Peacock. On June 2nd, opposition leader Kamla Persad-Bissessar made a public statement on a UNC platform that caused lots of discussion basically in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean region. Now, this discussion was centered around whether or not the opposition leader was racist or expressed racism in some public remarks. She was responding to a statement or basically her name being called by Government Minister Camille Robinson Regis on May 24th, who was speaking on a PNM platform, and she called the opposition leader's name several times during like less than 30 minutes when she was delivering her presentation. All right. Now this evening, we will look at some of what was said, and we will attempt to have a discussion on the implications of what was said by both women. For this discussion, I have joining me for the hour Umar Abdullah, the leader of the First Wave Movement, Mbau Mohini, leader of the National Joint Action Committee, and former talk show host Lorraine Boris Phillips. Good evening, lady and gentlemen.
Correction.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm the president of NJAC, not the leader. The leader
President.
is Quassim Otima.
All right, no problem.
Yes,
Thank you for that correction noted. So the leader of NJAC. Are each of you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing very clearly.
All right, I need a thumbs up from Mr. Umar.
Yeah, I'm hearing you now. I had to put on my headset. I wasn't hearing you clearly.
All right, lovely. Now, before we get into discussion, let's play some of what was said. We will do a short clip from Camille Robinson Regis, and then we will go to a clip from the opposition leader, Kamla Persad-Bissessar.
Kamla Sushila Persad-Bissessar, come down from there. There comes a time when we have to call out Kamla Sushila Persad-Bissessar.
In this government, we have WPC Camille, also known as Credit Card Camille, also known as Wigs, yes, Wiggy. And there's another one, using the government credit card. Camille, you think we forgot? Using the government credit card when you're in government before to buy what? Fertility treatment. Girl, don't let me start on you, you know. So stop calling my name on your platform. Stop calling my name. And what you so vexed about my name for? This lady went on a platform last week and 3 or 4 times, Kamla Sushila Persad-Bissessar. Isn't that a beautiful name? Yeah. What problem you have with my name? What's wrong with my name? Yeah, Camille. At least I have a name for my ancestors. Where you got yours from? Your name is that of a slave master. So be real, understand. We respect you. We respect ourselves. And I told everyone last time I spoke down in the Pinal Rock Road Hindu School, be proud of who you are. Be proud of what you are. In this country, the people of this land, we have come from the greatest nations of the world. That is what will make us a greater nation and make us a great people. Why? Our forefathers came out of Africa. They came out of China. They came out of India. They came out of Europe, all over the world. We have a melting pot of people here. Come here. So leave my name alone. I like my name.
All right, so that's a bit from both women. Ideally, we should have had a slightly longer clip from Camille Robinson Regis because she repeated the opposition leader's full government name about 4 times in her messaging. she was talking about different things on the campaign, but every time well, not every time, she repeated the opposition leader's full name about 4-5 times. Now, first off, racism or pecan? That's the discussion tonight, and it stems largely from the opposition leader's response to Camille Robinson Regis, Minister, particularly with respect to pointing out where the names came from. And I'll go to the lady first. Just give me one, one of the two, racism, pecan, and then we will expound later. Each of you will just give me one, racism or pecan.
All right, I think pecan. I would go with pecan rather than racism. Okay.
All right. Embahu Mahini.
And suppose I say neither.
One word.
I mean, neither.
All right. And we go to Umar Abdullah. One word.
In the context, it's difficult to arrive at one word, but it will more lean on the side of pecan. But we have to recognize as well that these two platforms are two totally different platforms, and the platform in which Kamla Persad-Bissessar was speaking on, usually you would get that type of rhetoric coming from that platform. The platform.
What's the difference in the platform?
Well, I think the platform on which Camille Robinson Regis was speaking on was a more official platform, and I think that's where the confusion would arise. So just asking the question whether it's racism or pecan kind of brings a bit of confusion into the fray. But coming from Kamla, we can say pecan. Coming from Camille Robinson Regis, I think there is a bit of a sort of an understanding one should have as regards to the particular platform that you're speaking on, and the type of language, the type of rhetoric should come from you as a leader, as a representative for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, oftentimes happening on the campaign trail. And we know the usual, silly season, we call it, where, there's a lot of pecan going back and forth and all of that, mudslinging and all of that. And that's the type of thing that you would hear on the campaign trail.
Okay,
and,
so before I move to one of your...
And that's why... Yeah, and that's why I think that we are here tonight. The reason why we're discussing this matter.
All right. Before I move to Embahu Mohini, I'd like for you to clarify for me again the difference in the platforms. You said Camille's platform is a more official platform. If I'm not mistaken, both of them are political campaigns. What makes the platform for Camille Robinson Regis more official in this case?
You're asking me or...
Yes, you made this statement. I just need clarification.
Yes. Because she's representative of the government. The government is in power. Yeah.
Thank you. So, Mr. Mohini, expound. You said neither racism or pecan.
Yes. I think that in the case of Camille Robinson Regis, she wanted to be a bit provocative, okay, because I could see no other reason why you are going to be repeating the entire name over and over, okay. In as far as the response is concerned, I don't see it as a racist statement, but I think it is very insensitive, given the nature of the political divide in Trinidad and Tobago, where politics is oftentimes viewed in terms of race, where race has been a dominant factor where our politics is concerned. And to make a statement such as was made by Kamla Persad-Bissessar, I think that the response that has solicited from the population is not one that we should be surprised about. As a matter of fact, NJAC welcomes a discussion of this nature where we examine the whole question of the name as came out of that situation, because we have suffered because many of us changed our names. I was not born in Bau Amenemat Moheni. I changed my name. In
All right.
reclaiming my identity, and therefore the name is important, but it is not to be used or abused, or as in the case of the opposition leader, where the name was used in such a manner in a political environment that could generate just the kind of response that we got. I think it was highly insensitive.
Okay, thank you for that. And Miss Laureen Boris Phillips, let's hear you expound on PICOM.
This is the kind of thing we hear from our political leaders all the time. You know, this kind of, to my mind, negative kind of pecan, but I regard it as pecan. On the other hand, the statement by Mrs. Prasad Bisesa, while it's still in my head, counts as the kind of political pecan we engage in. I think it is, I agree with Mr. Mohini that it's a little insensitive, because the people of African descent have lost most in the move from the involuntary move, should I say, from Africa to the Caribbean. We have lost our culture, we have lost our names, we have lost our way of life. Our families were deliberately broken up, because if you want to destroy a people, you break up their families. People were afraid to love their children because they could be sold away from you at any time. And so from that point of view, it is painful to listen to. To take the point a little further though, there is a sense in which I am glad that that was said, because we people of African descent are way too slow to discuss the issues that impact us negatively. You know, there's a whole field of study now of post-slave syndrome. They started studying Jewish children descended from people who had survived the Holocaust, who had been in the prison camps and so on. And they are now saying that they can see effects of this down to the third and fourth generation, Jewish people. So it is only now that we are being allowed to recognize that so many of our negative attitudes to ourselves is as a result of what happened, 2-3 generations ago, that we must not talk about. Everybody else must talk about their trauma, but we must not talk about ours.
So that's a very interesting take, Ms. Boris Phillips, both by you and Mr. Mohini. However, before we go deeper into the naming, I want to just read a part of the response by the United National Congress, the UNC, yesterday. They said in part, on a public platform weeks ago, Camille Robinson Regis made vile, veiled, and not so veiled attacks on Kamla Prasad Bisesa, using Prasad Bisesa's middle name as to race bait, ridicule, and provide quote-unquote humor for those who find ancestral names as Cecilia to be comical. No one condemned the PNM for that. Clearly racist behavior. How do you guys feel about that part of the response by the UNC? And I will go to Mr. Abdullah.
Everyone has this unique way of responding to statements made against them and so on. And we're talking about political parties here, political parties that has forever been, against each other, on the other side of the fence constantly. And the language of the letter would sort of be, you know, how to put it? They would, you know, exaggerate the points that they're trying to make. And I think they went into too much of exaggeration in expressing, um, you know, what it is they wanted to say. Because in actual sense, if somebody were to, um, if I had a name um, that, you know, would attract ridicule, and somebody would constantly repeat that name and so on, just by I being upset by those persons, you know, repeating the name continuously and so on, it would say something about myself and how whether I'm proud of my name or not. And if you're proud of it, proud of about your name, you know, I wouldn't respond to those persons. I wouldn't. But because
Okay.
of the fact that you feel, you know, a sense of insecurity as regards to your middle name, which is not used much. You yourself don't use that name much. So it says something about you and your name, all right? And when you respond to Camille in that fashion, you automatically brought you raised the whole ansness, all right? It's a whole different, you know, dynamic option. You brought the whole question of race, and we've had this continuously, you know, happening in Trinidad and Tobago. Example at the time she referred to Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, the Prime Minister, as a Oreo cookie. All right. And we see it happening all the time. We saw it in the election campaign in Tobago, where the Fatal Razak came into question and was actually used on a political platform in Tobago, you know, talking about the Indians and what have you and so on. And we see it happening all the time. And every time it happens, it raises this issue of race. And I think as politicians and as adults in this country, we ought to be very, very cautious. And like Dr. Mohini would have said, you know, we cannot be reckless in our language. We cannot be reckless in our speeches. We have to understand that we have younger people who are listening to us and who are attempting to take from us and attempting to learn from us and to develop their minds and to develop their ways and character and mannerism from us because
Right.
we are the ones who are leading right now.
Very,
And
very, very interesting
and
point.
yeah.
Very, very
So
interesting point.
we have to be very, very careful when it is respond. And I always make this point, yeah? People could say what they want and they could come at you how they want. It is how you respond that dictates what happens
Right.
after.
All right. So, Mr. Mohini, as we come to you, your colleague has spoken about the possibility of there being personal insecurity, then coming out as a projection to others. How do you feel about the statement by the UNC in response to condemnation?
What I find sad, I believe that when you look at both statements, statement that was made by Camille Robinson Regis as well as Kamala Prasad Sessa, you see the extent to which politics or life, because politics is really an extension of our life. Politics deals with fundamental issues in terms of where we are, where we want to be, and how we're going to get there. And I think that this country has gone definitely on a downward path where politics is concerned, where uh, 50, 60, 70 years ago, uh, coming from the political environment, you'll have seen where possibly 90% of what took place on a political platform within a political organization would have been centered around fundamental issues in terms of the things that affected the people their quality of life, etc. And possibly 10% will have been the non-issues. Today it is almost the reverse, where non-issues have become more dominant than the fundamental issues that need to be addressed. And the fact that a person's name could become such a big political issue is a clear indication of this. Whereas there are so many other fundamental issues affecting our people, people who are suffering and people who are in pain. And you are not seeing that drive, that verve, that energy to deal with those issues to the extent to which that so many of us are willing to just respond to a non-issue as far as I'm concerned. Yes, there are fundamentals involved. Yes, our name and our culture is what defines us. Yes, our name is our identity. It is something that could make us feel belittled, disrespected, or wanting, right? But in an environment, a political, social, economic, cultural environment as we exist in today, I believe that the body statements, because, okay, first of all, why are you repeating someone's name like that over and over and over to begin with, right? And then secondly, why respond? Why does the opposition leader respond in that manner? So in both cases, right, you see where the political environment is one that tends to harbor so much along the lines of non-issues, whereas there are fundamental, really fundamental. There are people who are going through trauma, not
Gotcha.
to talk about all the other
Gotcha.
issues.
So you essentially
But
believe that
I
this.
just wanted to say as well, right, that we suffered good, cultural attacks, not from any other race, but from within our own race, the PNM in particular, because the PNM spread propaganda that we did this for ourselves and also as an example to others. Look, I am proud of my identity. Good. I am going to change my name as an example. That was my main reason, to set an example that I am proud of my African culture, my African heritage, my African identity. And yet, in the 81 elections, we were hearing microphones all over the country saying, don't vote for NJAC. They would force you, as if we will go to someone's home. We would come to your home and tell you, from today your name has to be Lumumba or something like that, which is total
Okay.
madness.
So, Mr.
But
Muhini.
the population is gullible. The population is gullible. They bought it. So even though they were going and they were saying we had the best manifesto, we had the best ideas, we had the best platform, the best speakers, everything is the best. But no, we are afraid we have to wear long dress and change our name to African. That is
You've
there.
raised a very important point, and when we come back from the break, we will explore that. We will, of course, have to get Mrs. Boyce Phillips' point, her views on the UNC response. But right now, we've got to cut and take a short break and come back.
Tobago Glass Supplies has been a leading name for over 37 years in the glass and aluminum market in Tobago. We provide an extensive range of high-quality, innovative aluminum and glass products for commercial and residential use. Competitive prices with superior and professional services by committed employees who are guided by rigid quality standards. Tobago Glass Supplies specializes in the manufacture and installation of glass and aluminum products that are essential to today's homeowners and the business environment. We are engaged in marketing, sales, and installation of a variety of products. These ranges from windows and doors to necessities such as mirrors for homes and vehicles, designed and manufactured in-house or imported.
Excellence Promotion takes you to a musical paradise with Utopia. On Sunday, June 19th, the Buku Historical Park would come alive from 2 to 10 p.m. as TNT's most versatile jazz, reggae, soca, and Afrobeat artists grace the stage, indulge in Tobago's rich cuisine, and be captivated by pieces from Tobago's creative artisans at Utopia, the hybrid jazz experience, a fusion of music, food, and art. Tickets available online at islandetickets.com, in stores at Penny Saver Supermarket Canaan, Guy's AutoZone, Pure Vanity Lowlands. Call 716-6797 for more information.
Looking for plants for your garden or even a thoughtful gift for a friend? We at Eden Nurseries are waiting to welcome you with our affordable prices and variety of indoor and outdoor plants, flowers, palms, soil blends, pots, landscaping services, maintenance, irrigation services, and water features. Visit our garden shop and nursery Monday to Friday 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and Saturdays 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. located at the back of Orange Hill Gas Station, Shore Park, Tobago. Or call us 639-0776 and let us help you bring your garden to life.
Thank you for staying with us. You're viewing For the Hour. And for those of you, if you're now joining us, we are discussing Beneath the Surface, Racism versus Pekong. This is all centered around remarks made by opposition leader Kamla Persad-Bissessar in response to Minister Camille Robinson-Reggie's calling her full government name, which includes her middle name, Sushila, about 5 or so times on a campaign platform on May 24th. The opposition leader responded on June 2nd on a UNC platform, and we're basically discussing the issue of racism, the issue of the high levels of near racist Pekong that this country engages in ever so often, and whether or not this is actually, well, how you feel about it. And our panelists are Mr. Umar Abdullah, Mr. Mbahu Mohini, and Mrs. Loreen Boris Phillips. And we're going to go straight to Miss Boris Phillips because she has to respond to your thoughts on that bit of the media release by the United National Congress. And may I say that they had specified sort of being responding to something put out by the PNM Women's League, I suppose condemning what the opposition leader said, and they in turn said, listen, you need to condemn what your own minister said, what your own member of the PNM said. Ms. Boris Phillips?
It is the kind of thing that goes for political Pekong in our country, and I have always found it despicable and unnecessary. I resisted applauding when Mr. Mohini was talking, because that to me is what I thought the first time I heard, either of the statements. There are so many issues in our country that we need to get sorted out. So many things we need to deal with. Our young men in trouble. So many of our young people don't seem to have any sense of direction or anything like that. And this is what we spend our time doing. And I want to also mention something that a lot of people don't remember. Back in the 1970s, when there was the disturbance, or the revolution as we sometimes call it, the National Joint Action Committees, but one of the buzzwords was Indians and Africans Unite. At that time, both races were getting along quite well. We thought we had similar agendas in terms of improving the lives of our families, our children. But since then, our political situation has divided into this kind of viciousness that we hear every political season. And somebody was saying, sometimes, but it is usually around the election time that you hear all these things, the boat come in and all kinds of negative things.
Now, the question to you guys, does it then make it much more serious than we pretend it to be? Because if these are the things that essentially drive how this nation votes, and outside of election we say, oh, we are a diverse, multicultural, multi-ethnic society, we live in harmony, everybody just jump up when it's carnival time, everybody, you know, together when they need to be or not together when they need to be. However, for matters as serious as deciding on your government, matters as serious as people wanting to have that power of influence and the power to control the nation's economy, the way that they choose to go about trying to win over votes is through racial dividing through racism or racial means. Does that then mean that we are essentially pretending that we don't have the level of racial discrimination in our society that we actually do? Yes, Ms. Boris Phillips.
Are pretending, and not only that, there is also something that goes on at election time. There is the surface things that you hear, and sometimes the things that you hear on the surface are shocking enough, and then you hear the understory, and that is even worse. That is what happens. The things that don't get into the papers, that are not said on public platforms, are worse than what you actually hear on the public platforms. We have a problem of racism that we do not talk about, we don't discuss, and then also among people of African descent, we also have issues that we need to discuss.
All right.
I am not in the Indian community, so I do not know if there are any internal problems there. So that don't think I'm ignoring them. But I know the country has the problem of race, and among people of African descent, we have problems we need to deal with.
Now I want to show show a clip, a screenshot, if you will, of a call for a petition. Well, a petition. This petition is from an economist, Trinidad and Tobago economist, Marla Dukaran. She's based in Barbados. As a matter of fact, just before she did this, I was listening to her talking in a webinar about digital currencies, and then later the evening we had this going on. At the time when we grabbed this shot, it was close to 1,300 people signing. You can see on the screen the information that she has put out, calling for the removal of the opposition leader. According to economist Marla Dukaran, she's saying that at the level at which our former Prime Minister and now opposition leader is operating, she should know better than to make those statements. Now, as you guys know, we are divided on this in this country, and so we're just going to show two responses. Two responses to the call, to the petition. One that's basically saying, listen, this is not that serious. And well, on the screen we have Pierce Robinson, pretty well-known young man. He is agreeing with Marla, and you can see his statements there saying that it's high time, you know, the UNC, I suppose, changed their leader, and he has that bit of information up. He's agreeing with the petition by Marla, and then we have another gentleman who is, well, this is the wrong clip, but we have another gentleman who is agreeing that, well, in a sense, saying that what the opposition leader said is not that serious, right? So he is not agreeing with the petition to remove the... All right, so it's up. Frederick Fredo Simmons, and these are public posts on social media. We just grabbed two of them, one for and one against, so that you can see what people are saying. This person is saying to ask for Kamala to step down for this reason is ridiculous. All right, and the person is asking, Marla Dukaran, where were you when Pekong in TNT politics started? All the opposition leader did was give Camille Robinson a dose of her own medicine. As a matter of fact, it deserves a big laugh. Yes, it's true. Names like Mines and Camille is not the traditional African names. And to the panelists, you all were hinting to this discussion about the issues in the African community with respect to, I suppose, not understanding our history, not taking it as seriously, and we're not dismissing the East Indian issues that they may have in that community. However, the central discussion tonight is focused on the issue of the naming. And Brother Mohini, you spoke a bit about the naming, so I want to come to you in terms of just a repeat of your decision to change your name, and you now saying that all of this, in terms of part of the reaction by the public, is the PNM's fault. Let's hear some more from you on that.
No, I didn't say it's the PNM's fault. I said it's based on the political culture in the country. Okay. What I have said is that the PNM has been has attacked African culture when we presented it in the 70s. My point as well is that I don't think we should have a consultation on, an individual at this point in time. What we need is a consultation on the need for national unity. Because if we are to go forward as a nation, okay, a house divided against itself cannot stand, right? And the bigger factor there is how do we address the racial divide, the fact that political parties do use racism or racial factors in which divide our nation, which creates polarization, which creates antagonisms. They do use race as a factor in seeking to win votes in a society where, even our democracy is questionable. What we should be looking at is what can be done to make our political, our governance system more effective, more relevant, and more responsive to the needs of the people, the population, who, as NJAC stated, coming out of 600 consultations with communities across the nation in our manifesto, that the people are the national executive, right? You want to know how to go forward, they must be consulted, they must be involved. To me, these are the bigger issues rather than to deal with, some question of a petty thing as a name. Yes, for the individual is important. Yes, for the ethnic group or the race, it is important. But that is something that we have to resolve. I have to deal with my name at an individual level. Our African brothers and sisters, as well as our Indian brothers and sisters, they have to deal with rebuilding and strengthening their culture. And whenever we promoted culture in this country, we promoted both African and Indian as well as other ethnic groups. The chief servant used to host programs at the city hall with all ethnic groups performing, right? Every independence, okay? So we believe that if we are to go forward, we need to hold our hands, hold each other's hands, and build a common path forward as a nation and respect each other. Mm-hmm. We need to learn each other's history. We need to learn each other's culture in the schools, right? I am not very pleased to say, but a delegation of us went to Barbados in 1996 when Mia Mottley was the Minister of Education. Yeah, she was Minister of Education then. Mm-hmm. And she engaged us we went there for 5 days. She engaged us for a month to assist in setting up a Black Studies program in Barbados. We have nothing similar to this.
I want to go to a clip. First of all, I want to share the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, posted this evening. He posted a clip on social media, and you can see it on the screen there. We will play the video shortly, calling the opposition leader by her middle name. All right, and this video basically, the link to the video that's there, it's a link from the movie Roots. I don't know how many of y'all saw that or remember it, but he essentially was showing a clip from, and that's a theatrical, a film representation or representation, because I don't think that it fully showed what exactly happened, right? But we will come back. I'll try to get the video clip for you. It's just about 1 minute to show what the physical abuse, the emotional and psychological abuse and so on, centered around the Africans not having their names. And so Ms. Boris Phillips earlier mentioned that, you know, she was happy that this has happened in a sense, because it may force that discussion that is needed. Before we go into that, I want to get a bit of a deeper perspective from Mr. Abdullah, because Mr. Abdullah, you spoke about the possibility that if offense was taken to the use of the middle name, that may just be an indication about how one feels about that particular middle name. From your experience, understanding, is this something that is prevalent in our society, in the East Indian community, where you have East Indians who are ashamed of some of the names that they were given at birth?
Yeah, definitely. And we see it all the time sometimes in our own communities, we hear Indians making fun of other Indians' name and so on and so forth. And we all pass it off as a joke. Sometimes people are offended. People change their names due to those insecurities, feeling that that name doesn't really represent who they are, and they're ashamed of the pronunciation of the name, the sound of the way the name sounds, and all of that. And there's a lot of embarrassment there and so on. But the old people have a saying: the change from the dollar does bring the round. And politicians will forever find a way to distract from what is the real issues in a country. And I think this is nothing more than a mere distraction. All right? And who is the ones that's making it an issue? It is those who we have placed there to lead us and to manage our affairs. And I think, if the public, and this is the problem that we have in our society, the public sort of feed in to the beast, all right? And people commenting and people making statements for and against and that sort of thing. All we have to do is to ignore it.
But
and if the public ignores it enough, the politicians themselves is going to realize that they're on foolishness. And they ought to be focusing more on the issues rather than issues like, why are we discussing this? Ms. Phillips would have made the point where, probably perhaps now is a good time to have this discussion. But wasn't it a good time to have the discussion when the statement was made about the Fatal Razak? Wasn't it a good time to have the discussion when the statement was levied at the Prime Minister being Oreo cookie? Wasn't it at that point in time?
Well, there were many discussions.
When is it going to be a good time?
There were many discussions happening at that point in time. I think maybe
and we're still here.
The other question is, when do we actually take some action? Exactly. I know for me personally, as an African in Trinidad and Tobago, this has my attention, maybe more than the other things had my attention. I remember hearing of the Oreo remark. I don't necessarily remember that right now. And the Fatal Razak, you'll have to let me know if that's when that happened, who said it, etc.
That was an election campaign in Tobago.
I want to go specifically now to the video link as posted by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley today. All right, so we will play that clip now.
I want to hear you say your name. Your name is Toby. What's your name?
Kunta. Lord God help that boy. They're gonna whip him dead.
What's your name? Say it. Toby. Who are you? Say your name. What's your name?
Toby.
Hi. Say it again. Say it louder so they all can hear you. What's your name?
Toby. My name is Toby.
Hi. That's a good nigger. Cut him down.
All right, so while that's a film depiction from Roots, from the movie Roots, for those of us who have heard about, have read about, have gone and explored information that is available in the archives, etc., or you've gotten, written accounts, that is what comes to some of our minds when we heard that. Now, Mr. Abdullah, you talk about timing and what people choose to talk about and so on. That's always the question all the time. I suppose, just like you said, maybe a potential reaction based on how one feels about their name. For people who are reacting with outrage in particular, not necessarily people who are on a bandwagon, but people who are familiar with this reality, that is triggering. Even if you were not there, once you understand the historical context of the African name, that can trigger you. And I don't know, you guys have said your part, but for me personally, I think that is why this discussion is important right now, unless there's information that has not come forward historically. And I suppose this is the issue by some who have commented, and we don't have all of the comments, but I saw someone speak about the use of the statement, knowing deliberately what it meant, the psychology of what it meant. Sometimes not because some people are not educated enough to understand when they are being made a fool of or taken advantage of, means that you dismiss what is happening or what is being said about them. And to me, that's why this discussion is important right now. We may not do anything just like that change.org petition. We know the petitions don't work in Trinidad and Tobago. They have no legal standing. It's just a, I suppose, a notice of all the people who feel disgruntled or, whatever is going on, the reason for them signing it. But as some of you have said tonight, there's a need for greater education. Ms. Boris Phillips, I know particularly you and I shared a public space already, and I know something that you have said repeatedly to me and to many Trinidad and Tobagonians is the need to understand the history and the historical context of both of the major races in Trinidad and Tobago. And I hope nobody kills me for saying major races, but we have a lot of East Indians and a lot of Africans. I have said before, we are in a space, we're in a country, and I will dare any one of you to tell me that perhaps I'm wrong tonight, where the only people who do not identify as who they are race-wise is the African. I have never heard an East Indian say, I'm not an East Indian. I've never heard, even if they don't like the song that they name or something like that, And you all can tell me if perhaps there are examples of this out there. But we've never heard that. You've never heard a Chinese person in Trinidad and Tobago not identify as Chinese deliberately, openly. You've never heard a Syrian, anybody but an African, say, listen, I am not who I am. And I think that that's the importance of having this discussion and taking it beyond just the politics, because all three of you said tonight, this is the usual political picong in this nation. I am asking all three of you all, is this so common and acceptable that going forward, we will just sit by and say, that's the normal thing? I'm asking all three of you all as well, whether or not, at least to consider it. Do you see what Minister Camille Robinson-Regis said? And I wish we could have played more of the clip, but she spoke for about 30 minutes or so, in the same light as what was said by our former Prime Minister and now the opposition leader, Kamla Persad-Bissessar. How do you weigh these things? And the viewing audience and everybody else who will see this tape, that's the questions you have to ask yourself right now. Because I think that in Trinidad and Tobago, we pussyfoot around serious things. We pretend we don't have racism. But as we acknowledged here tonight, the main tool in our electoral politics is to divide by using racial issues. And it works. We see it in the 41 seats. We see it when they make a play for Tobago 2 seats. We see it in the campaigning. Now, to me, it is what it is. I am not going to say, let's go out there and try to tell people don't be racist. Everybody have their own context, that kind of thing. The question tonight, and I'd like each of you to give me perhaps just one way forward as we close this show. One, is this acceptable to you as an individual, responsible senior in Trinidad and Tobago? And two, one idea only, one concrete plan short. What can we do to ensure that this does not happen going forward? Or if you are comfortable with it being as is, you can say that. And we will start with Mr. Abdullah.
Yeah, certainly it is unacceptable, and we as a nation should reject it at every given chance. And it's interesting that the Prime Minister would have posted that clip, because in that clip it explains to me that due to the pressures under which Kunta Kinte was under at the time, being beaten with a whip constantly until he accepted the fact that he should accept his name as Toby. He was also beaten by a colleague of his, an African, just like himself. And that says a lot. And the thing about it is that there are many other, many other histories similar to it. We have in the Islamic faith where persons were beaten and persecuted and tortured to give up their religion. And they didn't. They died holding on to their faith. Here we saw by the couple cracks of a whip on a man's back, he gave up his name. So it tells a story, and it is being used today to divide and to rule. And what we need to do as Trinidadians, apart from rejecting it, we have to teach ourselves and teach our children that this is not the way, and this should not ever happen in your life, in your lifetime. We should never allow this to happen.
Okay.
And we should start that education process in our homes first and foremost, in our schools, and let it spill over into the communities by the use of our different NGOs, faith-based organizations, and what have you in our communities, and expand on that and continue to work that, because it's not going to happen in the parliament chambers. It's not going to happen there. It's not going to happen from the lips of our politicians, and it's not going to happen from the debates that we have in our parliament chambers.
All right. Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you very much for that. We just have 30 seconds each. Mr. Mohini, let's hear you.
Okay, that clip from Kunta Kinte, it indicates quite clearly the pain and suffering that was inflicted on African persons in order not just to change their name, but to accept white dominance, to accept white supremacy, because the message that was being sent by the slave master there is not just that Kunta Kinte has to change his name. He wanted to drive home the point that he was the boss, he was the master, and Kunta Kinte was the slave, that he had to accept that or die. And many Africans prefer to die, to give up their lives. And with regard to the second aspect of it, we need to have discussions like these where we look at things in a sober way in terms of what our politics is, what it ought to be, how we are going to change it, as well as that critical aspect. As a matter of fact, I was at a book launch not long ago. That was his worship, Junior Reguero in San Fernando, when he stated that there are only 2 times in the history of this country when he could recount Indians and Africans really making a genuine effort to unite, and he cited 1937 with Butler and Colarienzi and 1970 with NJAC. It is a fact, and unless more of us recognize the importance of it, because sometimes the bread and butter, yes, is important, but the bread and butter is only going to come when we recognize our own value as individuals, as communities, and as ethnic groups, and develop respect for ourselves as well as the respect for everyone else. This is what we need to do and to pursue vigorously.
Thank you for that. Let's go to Ms. Boris Philip.
Well, let me say I find it totally unacceptable. It doesn't matter which side of the divide it comes from. It's totally unacceptable. The way forward, I think, is to continue to have programs such as this, and this kind of thing should be discussed on as many of the talk shows as possible, and there are different aspects of it. It's not just the names. You have skin color. And by the way, one of the negative things about the racism against people of African descent is that in trying to ensure that they salve their consciences about slavery, they spread the narrative that a black skin is some kind of punishment, and so therefore you have to be in a subservient position. And so that has stayed with us up to this day within the African community. People prefer to think that the lighter skinned person is the better looking person, and that is something that we all know. And of course, more sensible people will say, well, that's arrant nonsense, but it's there. It's there in the sale of bleach cream and all the other things, and so on and so on and so on. So we need to continue this kind of discussion. I was intrigued when I heard that we need to teach it in our homes, but in the homes is where people learn all the different things about racism and so on. So there has to be like a more general approach to changing people's mindsets. It's a mind game. You have to change people's mindsets. And having gotten some way towards that, hopefully in the homes and in the schools, because our schools are also racially divided if you really look at it. And so there's a lot of work to do, but we deal with our problems by fetting more, buying more food, liming more, going to the beach more, and so on and so on and so on, and paying how much money for all inclusives, etc., because we don't want to face anything in this country. That is how we operate.
Thank you very much.
I will pray.
Our time is up, and as we go, what I'd like to leave with our listening audience is to reiterate what the panelists said tonight. All right. First of all, education. Yes, it starts in the home, but we know that some homes there isn't the capability right now. And so for me, I think a major step would be simply to reintroduce Caribbean history, world history in our schools from as low as primary school, reintroduce history, real history, not those Mickey Mouse books that we had before with just one person's idea of what was happening and telling us fanciful things. Give a real account of what our reality is. I would also like to make a plea to my fellow African brothers and sisters, because we have an issue that nobody else can help us with. And so we have to begin to get more conscious. We need to elevate. Too many of us operate on low vibrations. We've got to elevate. You have to actually pay attention to what's happening in our homes before we can go out and argue with other people. All right. Thank you very much to the panelists. Thank you for viewing, those of you who took the time to view. I hope that you are going to share this discussion and we can continue having discussions like it. You've been viewing For the Hour. I am Glendora Lashley. Good night.